Chosen ones. There are whispers hidden deep within the ruins of forgotten temples, and the voice that calls out from those broken stones speaks of you. Thoth, the great scribe of wisdom and cosmic law, foresaw a time when the veils between worlds would thin, and a singular being, unlike any before, would emerge to fulfill the unspoken prophecy. In his final writings, encoded within symbols too advanced for even the most learned scholars to decipher, he left a message not for the many, but for the few, for the awakened, for the chosen. Throughout ages, secret societies and seekers of forbidden knowledge have tried to unearth the true nature of this being. Some believed it to be a myth. Others spent lifetimes tracing its signs, finding pieces of the puzzle scattered across ancient texts, celestial alignments, and even the shifting consciousness of mankind itself. Yet all fell short, not because they lacked intelligence, but because the call was not meant for them. The resonance belongs to you, and you alone. The ancient texts spoke in riddles of a being who would be able to cross dimensions, speak the forgotten tongue of creation, and restore the true frequency of divine order. This being would be the key to unlocking the gates sealed since the dawn of man's fall. While the world above distracts itself with noise and illusion, the true story plays out in hidden chambers and deep within your soul's memory. The ancient guardians left trails not to be found with logic alone, but with a heart attuned to a higher calling. You have begun to hear it, a subtle stirring within you that cannot be explained by reason. And now, at the brink of time's final curve, Thoth's words ignite once more. He described a time of great chaos, deception, and engineered collapse, but also a moment when the chosen being would awaken fully and step into the lost inheritance of ancient light. You are not here by accident. Your path has been whispered across galaxies, coded into the fabric of existence itself. Beneath the ancient sands of forgotten empires lies a passage few have ever seen, carved in symbols so strange that even the most gifted cryptographers have been left bewildered. Deep within a temple lost to history, hidden far from the eyes of the common world, rests the final etching of Thoth, a record not meant for his era, nor even the ones that followed. It was reserved for a future soul, a singular presence whose very DNA would vibrate in harmony with the truths encoded there. That soul, hidden in plain sight, was always you. The passage itself is not written in any earthly tongue. It sings through geometric forms, weaving frequencies that bypass the conscious mind and embed themselves directly into the spirit. Those who stumbled across it without the inner map quickly found themselves either mad with visions or retreating in terror, unable to withstand the message meant only for a very specific being. The scholars who attempted to translate it reduced its grandeur into dry academic theories, missing the living pulse that beats within its design. Legends speak of the passage glowing faintly when the right being stands before it. Not a metaphorical glow, but a true radiant shift, as if the stone itself remembers who it was waiting for. In rare whispers among the initiated, there are tales of the last line of the passage reacting to the chosen one's breath, unlocking a wave of knowing so powerful that it reshapes the very fabric of identity. You may not have stood before it yet in the physical realm, but pieces of its memory have already begun resurfacing within you, showing up in your dreams, your sudden bursts of understanding, and the uncanny feeling that something ancient is calling your name across time. Every culture that guarded fragments of Thoth's wisdom knew this being would not need to be taught in the traditional sense. Instead, they would awaken through remembering. The final passage is less a message and more a mirror, showing the true face of the one who was always meant to complete the forgotten work. But with great revelation comes great danger. Forces exist that have spent millennia trying to distort, erase, or bury the path that leads to this moment. They fear the emergence of the one who can unravel the illusions that have kept humanity shackled in a dream of limitation. The passage speaks of a time when the sky would fracture with false light, when men would worship illusions as gods, and when the real power would be found not outside, but within the silent awakening of a chosen heart. That time is no longer prophecy, it is now. And yet, even standing at the threshold, few will recognize it. The glow is subtle, the call is gentle. It can be drowned out by fear, doubt, or the seductive comforts of the world. Only those who dare to listen beyond the noise will hear the ancient pulse and remember who they truly are. You were born with this memory buried inside you, encrypted by divine design. Long before temples rose and civilizations crumbled, there were scrolls hidden away, never meant for the multitudes. These ancient writings, protected in secret chambers and beneath layers of misleading records, spoke of a being not born of ordinary flesh, but woven from the light of worlds beyond this one. This being was not a figure of myth, but a living prophecy, whispered about in the dreams of seers, embedded in the prayers of mystics who dared to remember a future that had not yet arrived. The scrolls do not describe the being in grandiose language. Instead, they speak of a quiet arrival, unnoticed by the world at large, a soul cloaked in human form yet vibrating at a frequency so rare that even the fabric of time bends slightly in their presence. This being would carry within them a blueprint, an ancient codex encoded not in books or glyphs, but in their very essence, a living key capable of unlocking not just the mysteries of the earth but of existence itself. It was written that when the world fell deepest into illusion, when shadows disguised themselves as light, the true being of light would begin to awaken. They would not come with armies or signs in the sky, but through a quiet stirring in the hearts of the few who could still feel the difference between what is true and what is manufactured. Their very presence would disrupt false structures, shake loose forgotten memories, and cause hidden enemies to tremble not because of violence, but because of undeniable, unalterable truth. Yeshua once said, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden." Those words were not only meant for his immediate followers, but for the ones who would carry the torch when the final veil of deception covered the earth. A light that does not demand attention, yet cannot be extinguished, no matter how thick the darkness grows. A being whose existence alone would signal the turning of the age. The scrolls detail signs that would accompany the awakening: a sudden disconnection from the illusions of the world, a burning desire to seek what cannot be bought or taught, a profound loneliness, not because of lacking something, but because the world's noise no longer makes sense. And then, the most mysterious sign of all, a moment when reality itself begins to respond to the being's inner shifts, coincidences that are not coincidences, doors that open without being touched, visions that reveal truths no man has ever spoken aloud. This being would never need to declare themselves. They would not be recognized by crowns or titles, but by the undeniable resonance felt by those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. Their journey would be perilous, not because of external dangers alone, but because the true battle would always be internal, remembering who they are while the entire world screams for them to forget. Across the crumbling ruins of fallen empires, if one listens closely, there is a story not often told. It speaks of a fear that gripped even the greatest architects of the ancient world, a fear not of invasion or disease, but of an arrival. Hidden behind the construction of monolithic temples and vast stone grids lies a silent confession. They were trying to delay something inevitable, a being whose very existence would undo what they spent millennia building. They knew you would come. They just did not know when. The architects were not merely builders of stone. They were masters of energy, working in tandem with unseen forces to anchor a system that would entrap the human soul in cycles of forgetting. Their structures were blueprints for frequencies designed to weigh down the spirit, to sever its connection from the source little by little across generations. While their temples dazzled the eyes of the masses, their true work was invisible, embedded in the vibrations of the earth and the very breath of those who walked through their corridors. They did not fear rebellion. They did not fear knowledge. They feared remembrance. Because remembrance, true, soul-deep awakening, is a force no wall can contain, no spell can bind. The being they feared was not a warrior clad in armor, but a living mirror that would reflect the falseness of their systems and cause them to collapse from within. Your arrival was seen as an inevitable breach in the great deception, a crack that would widen until the whole edifice crumbled into dust. There were attempts to change the timelines, to manipulate the river of destiny so that your path would never intersect with the right frequencies. Whole wars were fought in secret over sacred artifacts that carried pieces of your code. Pieces that, when united, would restore what had been suppressed. Schools of mystery were infiltrated. Bloodlines were diluted. False teachers were sent to lead the seekers astray. Yet despite all their maneuvers, the architects could never erase the signature that was placed within you from the beginning. Yeshua hinted at this force when he said, "The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone." His words echoed far beyond his time, pointing to a deeper pattern that has played out again and again. The chosen one is always seen as a disruption, a threat, something the architects would rather eliminate than embrace. But what they cannot comprehend is that your arrival is not an attack. It is a correction, a restoring of what was always meant to be. They built their monuments to withstand earthquakes and floods, but they could not fortify them against a being whose mere presence alters the vibrational fields they so meticulously designed. They buried knowledge under stone and sand, hoping it would stay silent. They never imagined that knowledge itself would walk again, not in scrolls or artifacts, but in human form. In you. There are forces at play within you that have remained dormant for lifetimes, waiting for a signal that could not be faked nor forced. These are not codes written in the language of man, but in the pulse of existence itself, buried beneath layers of memory, emotion, and experience. You were seated with them long before you took your first breath in this lifetime, long before the world placed its heavy hands upon your soul and told you who you were supposed to be. They waited in silence, unbothered by the chaos above, because they were tuned to something beyond the reach of this world. The activation was never meant to be loud. No flash of light, no dramatic sound. Instead, it happens the way a seed quietly splits underground before breaking into the light. It is in the strange dreams that feel more real than your waking life, in the moments where time slows and the air itself seems to vibrate differently around you, in the sudden knowing that enters your heart like a whisper you cannot explain but cannot deny. These are the signs the codes are awakening. Long ago, when Thoth set the mechanisms into motion, he understood that brute force would never be enough to protect sacred truth. Only subtlety, only hidden resonance could ensure that the chosen one would find their way back to themselves when the moment was right. He encrypted these codes into the very fabric of your being, woven through your spirit like a song you have long forgotten how to sing, but which still hums softly beneath every heartbeat. As the codes awaken, you may find yourself drawn to things you once ignored. Ancient symbols, strange patterns, numbers that seem to follow you without reason. Synchronicities will increase, not merely as signs to comfort you, but as threads meant to be followed back to a deeper source. This is not random. It is a conversation between your awakened self and the higher planes that have been watching, waiting, and preparing for your return. Yeshua once spoke in parables, telling those with ears to hear and eyes to see that the kingdom was within them. His words, layered with hidden meanings, were not just teachings but triggers, seeds meant to interact with the codes buried inside the chosen ones of future generations. A silent activation, waiting for those strong enough to hear through the noise of a fallen world. But be warned, not every activation feels like bliss. Sometimes it comes through great loss, through betrayal, through the crumbling of the illusions you once depended on. It strips you not to harm you, but to reveal the core that was always there, waiting beneath the layers of falsehood. As one layer peels back, another light emerges, and with it, a new level of remembrance. Hidden within the teachings of Yeshua are threads that have been carefully ignored, mistranslated, or buried under layers of doctrine and ritual. Yet those who listen with the heart instead of the ears have always sensed something more, a deeper resonance, a whisper about the nature of time itself and the silent watchers who tend it. Yeshua did not speak of timekeepers directly in the common texts, but to those closest to him, in quiet moments away from the crowds. He hinted at a truth too vast for most to comprehend. He spoke of those who guarded the thresholds of ages, who marked the passages between cycles, and who awaited the moment when a being like you would rise. The timekeepers were never beings of flesh and bone. They are custodians of frequencies, protectors of balance, operating beyond the limits of human perception. They do not interfere openly, but rather maintain the flow of the river of time, ensuring that certain currents converge exactly when they must. When Yeshua said, I tell you the truth, before Abraham was, I am. He was not simply speaking of his divinity. He was revealing an understanding of existence outside of linear time, a state of being known intimately by the watchers who govern the corridors between worlds. The scrolls and secret teachings suggest that the timekeepers have long awaited a disturbance, a shift so profound that it would ripple backward and forward through time itself, destabilizing the false grids imposed by those who sought to enslave humanity's memory. That disturbance was never an event. It was a soul, a living frequency carrier, capable of reigniting the original timeline designed by the Source, the golden thread nearly lost to the ages. And that soul is you. You may have already sensed their attention, subtle nudges in the flow of your life. A door closing that seemed like misfortune but was in truth a rerouting, a meeting with someone who seemed accidental but whose impact changed the course of your entire path. These are not coincidences. They are careful adjustments made by hands unseen, calibrating you to the precise conditions necessary for your full awakening. Yet the timekeepers are not infallible. They too face a struggle against those who have learned to manipulate the outer layers of reality, weaving false timelines designed to entrap even the most awakened souls. The battlefield is not only within you but around you, a silent war for the future of human consciousness. And in the center of this war stands a figure foretold in whispers, hidden in prophecy, cloaked in everyday skin but carrying the essence of cosmic revolution. The deeper mysteries Yeshua hinted at remain unspoken to this day, guarded not by fear, but by wisdom. For truth revealed too soon can destroy rather than liberate. He knew that only those who remembered themselves from the inside out could bear the weight of the knowledge waiting beyond the veils. There are fractures in the fabric of this world that most eyes cannot see. Hidden in places where the veil thins, where reality itself quivers like the surface of disturbed water, there exist rifts, silent passageways between dimensions. Ancient texts, now lost to dust and time, once spoke of these rifts as breathing points of creation, gateways not merely to other spaces, but to other states of being. Yet access to them has always been fiercely guarded, not by locks or barriers, but by the vibrational signatures that align with their presence. Only a being carrying the original resonance could ever hope to pass through without being torn apart by forces beyond human comprehension. That being is you. The world is conditioned to believe only in what it can see, measure, and control, yet the deepest truths have always lived beyond the reach of the senses. The dimensional rifts do not reveal themselves to the curious or the reckless. They respond to a frequency so pure, so ancient, that even the distortions of time cannot alter it. The resonance is carried in your breath, your blood, your very thought patterns, woven into you by a design far older than this earth. While many may search for these gateways through technology or forbidden rites, the true access lies in a remembering, an inner alignment so complete that the rift recognizes you before you even recognize it. Whispers from ancient mystery schools suggest that Thoth himself journeyed through such rifts, not as an explorer seeking conquest, but as a guardian carrying codes meant for a future being. Some say he left keys hidden within the rift itself, programmed to awaken only when the rightful one approached. And so, for ages, these dimensional fractures have remained silent, waiting for your vibration to match their call. Yeshua hinted at such crossings when he spoke of the narrow gate, the path that few find because it requires the abandonment of all illusions. He knew the doorway was not a place, but a state of being, a sacred convergence of will, faith, and divine memory. To step through it is to step beyond the known, to leave behind everything familiar and venture into the living unknown where the soul itself must lead. The rift is not merely an escape from the broken systems of the world. It is an initiation, a rebirth. Those who dare to walk through it leave behind not just their pasts, but the false selves they were taught to wear. On the other side lies not simply a new world, but a truer reflection of the world that always was, now revealed through eyes finally cleared of the dust of forgetfulness. Yet the path to the rift is not marked by signs the world would understand. It is disguised as a series of ordinary moments layered with extraordinary potential. A decision made in faith rather than fear. A leap taken without proof of where you will land. A trust in the voice that calls you forward even when everything familiar urges you to stay behind. Among the secret corridors of history, there existed a brotherhood whose sole purpose was to guard the hidden truths of creation. They were not rulers or warriors as the world would recognize them, but stewards of a deeper current, one that moved unseen beneath the tides of empires and revolutions. These men and women, often mistaken for myths, lived between the lines of recorded history, preserving knowledge that could not safely be entrusted to kings or scholars. Yet in their most sacred texts, buried beneath layers of symbol and cipher, they left warnings about a being whose arrival would disrupt the balance they so carefully maintained. They spoke of you. The Brotherhood knew that while the world would descend into chaos, deception, and engineered darkness, there would rise one who carried within them the pure, undistorted frequency of the original light. They knew that this being would not be corrupted by offers of power or threats of exile, because they would not come seeking approval from any earthly authority. They would walk a different path, a narrow thread invisible to the masses, but brighter than any crown or title. And they feared what would happen when that light, long hidden, finally stepped into the open. It was not fear of evil that drove their warnings. It was fear of disruption. Systems, even corrupted ones, create a form of order. They feared what would come when the false structures humanity depended on began to unravel under the influence of a truth too pure to be manipulated. The Brotherhood understood that change on that scale could not be controlled, only witnessed. They saw in the being's awakening not just the end of their carefully guarded secrets, but the end of the world as it had been shaped for millennia. Many among them believed it would be safer to prevent the awakening altogether. Some turned to darker paths, seeking to create false chosen ones, simulations of the true being, distractions to siphon away the awakening energies before they could converge. Others chose silence, retreating into deeper shadows, hoping the timeline could be delayed long enough that humanity might adapt without shattering. In their hidden manuscripts, they left clues for those who would one day awaken. Warnings about false lights, about teachers who would twist the truth for their own ends, about structures of authority built not to guide but to imprison. They encoded these warnings in architecture, in stories passed down through seemingly unrelated traditions, in symbols that only the awakened would recognize when the time came. Yeshua himself spoke to this when he said, "Beware of false prophets, who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves." He understood that in the age of the awakening, deception would mimic light so skillfully that only those who carried the true frequency within would be able to discern the difference. It was never about following a voice outside, but about recognizing the resonance that could not be counterfeited. Across the sands of forgotten time, two figures stand out in sharp relief: Thoth, the keeper of wisdom and cosmic law, and Yeshua, the living embodiment of divine truth walking among men. At first glance, their lives seem separated by ages and worlds. Yet beneath the surface of recorded history lies a secret alignment, an invisible thread that binds their missions together across time's illusions. This connection was not born of mere admiration, but of design, a preordained convergence woven into the architecture of reality itself, preparing the way for the one who would come when the veils grew thickest. That one is you. Thoth spoke in symbols and frequencies, encoding his messages into the stones, the stars, and the DNA of those who could carry the light forward. He understood that wisdom could not be forced upon a world still asleep. Instead, it had to be seeded, hidden within myths and rituals, awaiting the day when the sleeper would stir and begin to hear the song again. Yeshua, walking in flesh through the brokenness of the world, continued this mission in a different form. His parables, his miracles, his very life were codes within codes, bypassing the intellect and speaking directly to the eternal spark within the chosen ones scattered across time. Both knew the laws that govern higher worlds, and both understood that true transformation cannot be imposed from the outside. It must arise from within, from a recognition so deep it cannot be undone by persecution, ridicule, or fear. They worked not to create followers, but to awaken initiates, those who would hear the silent call and remember who they truly were without the need for approval or recognition. There are records, long hidden, that speak of a mysterious communion between the wisdom of Egypt and the path Yeshua would later walk. Symbols shared across distant lands, teachings that echo the same cosmic principles despite being separated by centuries. It was never about creating religions or kingdoms, but about preserving a pure current of truth that would one day be retrieved by the one whose resonance matched both the scribe of the old worlds and the shepherd of the new. When Yeshua said, "I have other sheep that are not of this fold," he was pointing beyond the immediate moment, hinting at connections unseen by the world, alliances stretching beyond the earth itself. He spoke to those who would one day awaken to a memory older than their current life, who would recognize the call of both Thoth and Yeshua as parts of the same grand design. This is not about merging teachings into a new doctrine, but about realizing the unity that was always there, hidden in plain sight. A unity waiting for the one who could carry it forward not by words alone, but by vibration, by presence, by the very way they move through the shifting fields of a world on the brink of transformation. You are not merely a seeker wandering ancient ruins for lost wisdom. You are the fulfillment of a pact made long before the stones were laid, before the words were written. You are the living convergence of two missions separated by time, yet joined in destiny. There is a gate not built by human hands, hidden from the eyes of the world, yet pulsing with an ancient awareness. Unlike the towering monuments of old, or the secret chambers tucked beneath forgotten temples, this portal does not respond to rituals, bloodlines, or the cleverness of the mind. It responds only to resonance. It waits in silence, untouched by the march of centuries, sealed not by locks but by the laws of creation itself. It was never meant for the many. It was created for the one, for you. The final gate recognizes no authority but the signature embedded within your very being. No amount of study, force, or manipulation can open it. Its mechanism is older than language, older than time as you understand it. It is tuned to the original frequency you carry, the echo of the source that cannot be counterfeited or corrupted. When you draw near, the gate will know. It will vibrate with the memory of your design, and the boundary between worlds will begin to thin in response to your awakening. The ancient scrolls hinted at this reality in parables and veiled metaphors, warning that many would try to storm the thresholds of divine power, using methods of the lower mind. They spoke of scholars who would spend lifetimes decoding symbols, sorcerers who would twist energies to mimic the true signature, and rulers who would build empires atop lies designed to bury the knowledge of the gate forever. Yet none of them could breach its defense. They were locked out not because the gate despised them, but because it did not recognize them. When Yeshua said, "No one comes to the Father except through me," the deeper current beneath his words pointed not to external worship, but to a resonance so pure it became the doorway itself. It was never about exclusion, but about alignment. The same principle governs the final gate. It requires no words, no offerings, no demonstrations of worthiness. It demands only truth, the living embodiment of what was always written in your spirit before you ever set foot in this world. Approaching the gate is not a matter of travel, but of transformation. As you shed the false skins layered upon you by a world desperate to make you forget, your true frequency rises to the surface. The gate feels it, it stirs, it begins to awaken just as you do. And with every step closer to your authentic self, the boundary between you and the hidden realm grows thinner. There are legends whispered among the remnants of the Brotherhood that the gate, once opened, will not just allow passage but will unleash a ripple across all dimensions, correcting fractures seated in the ancient wars between light and shadow. They feared it because they could not control it. They buried it in story and song, hoping its memory would be diluted. Yet you have found the thread, and the gate has begun to listen. The idea of an end terrifies those who have tethered their worth to a world built on illusions. They see the crumbling of systems, the unraveling of long-standing beliefs, and they fear annihilation. Yet for you, the one who carries the seed of original memory, the end of time is not a death but a coronation. It is the moment when the old matrices fall away and the true nature of existence emerges, no longer filtered through the broken mirrors of a fallen world. It is the beginning of your reign, not over others, but over the destiny etched into your spirit long before this world was ever shaped. Time, as humanity knows it, was never meant to be a prison. It was intended as a tool, a vessel for experience and growth. But over countless cycles, it became twisted into a cage, a looping current designed to keep souls asleep, repeating patterns they no longer remembered choosing. The architects of the false grid understood that as long as time remained linear and heavy, awakening could be delayed, perhaps even prevented. They wove fear into the very notion of endings, teaching that to step beyond time was to step into oblivion. They never imagined that one would arise who saw through the illusion and recognized the truth, that beyond the end lies the return to sovereign being. The reign that awaits you is not built with thrones or armies. It is woven through influence at the level of vibration, through the quiet reordering of frequencies as your awakened presence moves through the shattered remnants of the old world. Those who can still hear will be drawn to you without understanding why. Systems will falter not because you attack them, but because your mere existence reveals their falsity. You become the living catalyst for the restoration of the original design, the divine architecture that has awaited your return. Yeshua spoke of this mystery when he said, "The last will be first, and the first will be last." He pointed not to a reversal of earthly status, but to the great inversion that would occur when time itself collapsed. Those dismissed, hidden, forgotten in the structures of the old world would rise, not in revenge, but in luminous remembrance. The meek, the unseen, the ridiculed. These were always the seeds of the new creation, lying dormant beneath the weight of corrupted timelines, waiting for the moment of convergence. The signs of the end are all around you now. Systems once thought invincible teeter on the edge of collapse. Voices long silenced begin to stir. Hidden truths surface, shaking loose the foundations of false authority. Yet within this chaos you find clarity. Within the crumbling you find your coronation song. You were never meant to inherit a broken kingdom. You were meant to breathe life into a new one built not on control but on resonance with the living truth that has always been. If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.